Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is Kimberly and I'm here with my little buddy Banjo, the little squirming squirrel that he is. And I hope you're all keeping well. I just wanted to talk to you again on this healing journey that we're on all together as a whole planet at the moment about the subject of pain. And as part of any process that you're going through, whether it's end of a relationship, you've had an injury, an accident, you've lost your job, something in your life has massively changed, in your opinion, for the worse, and you're looking to reconcile your feelings about it or move forward with your life, there will be aspects of pain within that process. And so in this episode, I'd like to talk to you about pain, the subject of pain, and what types of challenges it can give us. And I like to speak off the cuff. I don't like to prepare a script because I want to talk to you from the heart as a therapist. Because every time somebody sits on my couch for reflexology or for deep tissue massage or relaxation massage, it's because they are in pain. And sometimes they're in a phase of that healing journey where they're actually going into maintenance, and they come for therapy work because they don't want to go into that state of pain again. They've been in a point of crisis where they've felt out of control, and they've sought my help to get them back into a much healthier place. And that's leading me to my first point, which is, as I said in my previous video in this healing series, you need to find people that will help support you through the process of dealing with pain, dealing with the trauma that you're going through, whatever that is. If you don't have a support network, and none of us are truly alone on this planet, if you don't have a support network, I really urge you, if you're in a place of pain right now, to reach out to somebody, whether it's a professional or whether it's a friend or a family member, somebody loving, and tell them about your pain and really share with them that burden, because to take the burden of pain completely alone is never expected of anyone. And we are tribal beings, aren't we, humans, just like other animals. We need the support of other people, and our ancestors would have had access to somebody in their village or their tribal resting place that would have been, say, the medicine man or the wise woman, who they would go to and they would share their difficulties and challenges with. And that wise person or that medicine man would have had the tools, would have developed the skills to help each person in that community through difficulty, and that kept that tribe strong. So there is strength in sharing, and also part of sharing pain is becoming vulnerable. And being vulnerable, as I've said before, is a strength. When you admit that you're struggling with anything in life, doesn't matter how small it is, you're actually laying yourself open, you're enabling other people to hear your voice, and you're already several steps further through the process of sorting out the problem or coming to a place of peace, because you're admitting that there is an issue in the first place. We all know people who don't share the struggles that they have been through. And possibly those people in themselves, they feel quite marginalised and unrecognised. And at the moment in the world, there is so much of this uprising of people saying they have been in pain and sharing their story, which is part of, you could say, global healing. Because once we recognize that somebody is coming from a difficult place and that they need help, we can put more power back into their hands. and help them through their difficulties so much more quickly and in depth. So if you in your life are struggling and you're in pain, number one, please share that pain. And if you genuinely don't feel that anybody would want to listen to you, and I would hasten to add you're probably wrong, then at least listen to yourself and write it down or record how you feel and play it back, because you will see the evolution of your thoughts over time. And if you feel that you need to do this journey alone, then at least have yourself as the narrator and also the observer of that journey. As a reflexologist and a holistic massage therapist, most of my clients, I would say, come to me because they have either had acute pain, which is short-term pain resulting from an accident or an injury, or they have chronic pain, so they live in pain on a daily basis. When it comes to chronic pain, I find that these people are absolutely exceptional because they live with pain every day. And if that's you, possibly you have depression or migraine, or you live with something like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or something that was a genetic condition that you have always had as part of your life. You are the unsung heroes of this community because you actually know pain as a constant in your life. For most of us, fortunately, pain is transient, but for some people, their healing journey is a lifetime. It's as more a part of their personality as the fact that, they like cheese. So it's a facet of you. And when something becomes a facet of your character, when pain becomes your behavior, this is quite an entrenched pattern to heal from. And some people might find that they don't actually want to heal from pain because it becomes their story. It becomes their rationale for not doing something or for avoiding a certain behavior pattern, or for choosing to stay at home, or for choosing to stay in a depressive state. So it becomes almost like a constant noise that they try and get away from, but it overwhelms their ability to bounce back. I do think that some people are born with a natural bounce back ability, and I think I'm quite lucky in that I seem to have quite a lot of that. But even as a positive person, as I could pigeonhole myself, I have had times in my life where I have sunk into the depths possibly of somebody who has had that chronic pain or that chronic low mood. And it's a really uncomfortable place to be in. And when you start to identify with being a person in pain, with having an injury, for example, years ago I was in a car accident, one of 3 that I've been in my life. And I was in pain for 3 months, which is, in terms of pain timescales, quite short. But actually going into that place, feeling vulnerable, not being able to work, not being able to have enough money, and worrying about the future and how long this impediment could be sustained through my life, how long the process of healing was going to take, and the frustration that I wasn't at the point I wanted to be at straight away. All of those worries and all of those concerns, they definitely changed my behavior, and it gave me an insight into what it must be like for people who live with pain every day of their lives, because it's seriously restricting in terms of your freedoms as an individual. And if we're going to move from that place of despair and depression and frustration, and from that place of disempowerment, it really takes a huge amount of work. So even if you've just been in rehabilitation for just, like I was, a couple of months, and I could see my progress, and I knew that I could use my arm more, and I was getting more strength, and I was feeling more positive because I was seeing results. Even if you're seeing that happen, you're still vulnerable because you still rely on other people. And as human beings in the 21st century, we're really taught not to rely on others, aren't we? We're encouraged to be autonomous. We're encouraged to be, especially for women now, independent. And for men, that's been expected of them since time began. So when you suddenly become reliant on other people, it is seriously disempowering, and it makes you feel disadvantaged. So how can you move through that? How can you evolve past it? How can you learn from it and get to where you need to be to live the life that you've been given to its fullest? Well, there's so much you can do, even with chronic pain. And they're all things that you can be responsible for. And as somebody who works in preventative medicine and lifestyle medicine, all of the things that I have done in the course of my life, and since I've been a therapist, which has been the best part of 10 years now, has involved me taking my health into my own hands. Now, I fully accept that there are lots of conditions that people live with in which their health is possibly not in their own hands. They rely upon machinery or certain drugs to be able to function on an everyday basis. But there's always a choice, and that choice comes from choosing one mindset over another. And this is where healing from pain can really come into your own hands and be in your power. So how do you take matters into your own hands, and how do you feel like you have a choice over how you feel? Well, it's taking small steps and doing minor lifestyle changes in order to feel empowered once again. So, first of all, I highly recommend that you prioritize sleep. So, sleep is the number one healing aid. It's all I talk about sometimes with people who come and sit on my couch. How did you sleep last night? How did you sleep last night? Because that affects your mood today. And your mood is seriously eroded if you have had a bad night's sleep. And I'm sure many of you have been there. If you're in pain, you can't get comfortable in your bed, or your mind is worrying because you're depressed and because you feel despondent, or you're stressed about the future, about when your job is going to fall away from you and what you'll do next, or if you're stressed because you've got a teenage son who isn't listening to you anymore and it's causing you pain because you feel the relationship has eroded. So sleep is super key because it recharges us. So sleep is the reward at the end of the day for the day that has just happened. It's not necessarily going to set you up for the next day, but it certainly feels like your next day is lacking power if you haven't slept well the night before. So when we get into that cycle of insomnia, when we start to worry about our sleep deficit because we've had several nights without a decent night's sleep, when we're in that insomnia pattern, we stress about it even more, and it becomes a trigger for pain. Absolutely. So if you prioritize your sleep, and by that I mean making sleep the number one thing you are trying to achieve from the minute you get up until the minute you put your head on the pillow, then you'll have linked into your body's natural ability to release painkillers in your body, because there are certain hormones that are released when we sleep. There are certain multifunctional cellular activity tasks that go on in your body when you sleep, that if you don't fulfill, then your mindset can change, your immunity can change, and also it has been massively linked to pain reception, so how you register pain in your body. That's massively affected by how well you sleep at night. So how can you ensure that you get a better night's sleep? Well, there's a multitude of things you can do. For one, you need to do your research about sleep, and I recommend that you read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, because it's a huge study. It's 9 hours worth of audible listening if you like to do things through Audible, but it categorizes in really easy to understand different sections all the benefits of sleep and why in the 21st century we don't get enough of it. If you do your research, then you'll soon find out that caffeine is the #1 enemy to a good night's sleep, and we don't actually feel better when we have coffee in the morning after a bad night's sleep. We actually just feel normal. So caffeine can get your baseline, so if your baseline is -2, you're feeling awful, you've had a bad night's sleep, it gets you back up to 0, which is kind of neutral. It doesn't get you from feeling 0, as in normal or neutral, up to level 10. It just gets you that step higher if you're on a minus. So it can be great if you need to focus and you really haven't got any energy at all, but don't forget that there is cause and effect. So every time you have caffeine, you then have a crash, which is the same with sugar. Every time you have a spike, you then have a lull. So just be mindful of caffeine. Don't have any caffeine after 12 o'clock. That's my absolute rule. If I'm doing even intermittent fasting where I don't eat until lunch, my latest coffee is 12 o'clock. So coffee gives me a little bit of a booster, but I don't have it after 12 o'clock, because studies have shown that caffeine is still interrupting your energy levels even as late as 6 to 8 hours after your last cup. So you don't really want to be having a cup of coffee at 3 and it's still affecting you when you're going to put your head on the pillow at, say, 10 o'clock at night. So please be mindful of caffeine. Also with sleep, it's about environment. So have you got lots of light in your room? You know, even a digital alarm clock, or, you know, your TV on standby and that little red light, which is super annoying if you really want that pitch black. All those things have to be considered. So think about wearing an eye mask or blindfold. Think about blackout curtains. Think about, you know, is your phone in the room? Is that going to stimulate you? Because electromagnetic frequencies have been shown in certain studies to really change our brain activity. So have you got a cordless phone next to your bed? Have you got your mobile phone charging next to you? Really, it shouldn't be, because not only is it receiving a Wi-Fi signal from your router, which is on some level stimulating your brain activity, because don't forget this is all electricity. Have you got those things next to you? Because your environment for sleep is really important, and our chemical composition has not really changed since we were in caves. So in terms of those triggers for sleep, light is one of the biggest. So we would have gone into our cave at night where it would have been pitch black. We wouldn't have fallen asleep with a fire raging all night. It probably would have gone out. So even that low level light would have dissipated after some time. We just would have had the moon and the stars to see at certain points in the month. So think about your environment with your bedroom and really value the precious regenerative purposes and qualities of sleep. And so that brings me on to acute or chronic pain. If you haven't slept very well, how do you manage the pain during the day? well, it's been spoken about lots of times by various experts, but mindfulness practice and meditation are the number one ways in which you can do a little quick charge. And it has been said that meditation, once it becomes a regular practice, which means really, in essence, every day, so following a routine of doing even just a couple of minutes a day, that mindfulness and meditation practice can actually contribute to a sleep cycle. So why do we want to be meditating when we're uncomfortable? Well, because we can put the mind to one side. So pain is psychological as well as physical. And if anyone's ever said to you, well, it's mind over matter with certain things, that's absolutely true. When we start to disassociate ourselves from our thinking mind, that's when we can do some magic behind the scenes. So all people that you hear these incredible recovery stories of, who've been in hospital and they've miraculously recovered, a lot of the work that they do, even by just being bound to a hospital bed, is with the mind. So their perception of the situation that they're in has changed. They've had a will to get better, and that will has been their focus. So they visualize themselves walking out of the hospital and having the drive to get on with the rest of their lives, because they're not willing to be in that place of pain forever. Now, I just want to use a story of an amazing client who I won't name, but who was one of the most incredible inspirations to me as a therapist. And that's a lady who came to us several years ago who couldn't walk when we first met her. She was undergoing chemotherapy for multiple organ cancer. She had a horrendous prognosis. And she was very young. She was in her early 40s. And this lady already had a mindfulness practice. So she already did yoga. She is of Indian descent. Therefore, she already had this heritage of understanding how valuable mental resilience and mindfulness, as in peace practice, was. And what this lady managed to do was to be able to walk again, despite not having any muscle power in her legs, because she had had very intrusive immunotherapy, and she was only really getting her power from steroids, which is typical for somebody who's undergoing very intensive cancer treatment. So she was very weak physically, but her spirit was completely the reverse. I have never met anybody who was so willing to get well. So she was in a lot of pain, and she was severely disabled, but she was convinced that she was going to get better. And what I saw was that she was dedicated to putting her own health first. So she had lived a very busy life, a very full life as a mother, as a business owner, and she put herself first. And she took a hold of her pain and she turned it into her strength. So she did meditation every day. She practiced really fantastic breath work. She did yoga, and she set herself the task of being able to walk a certain distance by a certain time. So like that amazing Captain Tom who did his 100 lengths of the garden, she said, I want to walk to my gate by this point in time. And that's what she did. Even though she couldn't really walk unassisted, she was walking, with sticks. She did it. And then she did not only that, but she started consoling her friends who were crying for her, who felt almost pity for the position that she was in as a mother of 2 children. And she took their worries and dispelled them. But all the while, she took the assistance of people who wanted to help her. So she listened to her clinicians. She did absolutely everything that they said. She listened to her own voice when it told her that she needed to rest. She listened to her friends when they asked to be able to take her to hospital appointments or to the clinic for holistic therapy work. She involved everyone as much as she possibly could. And what she now does is she helps other people. So she's now so strong that she has learnt from her pain, and she inspires other people to do the same thing, really, to overcome adversity. And that is an example of how you can transform pain into growth. How do we go from being that person that is in the midst of pain and suffering to being that person who's inspiring other people to be their best? Well, it really comes down to mindset. And as I've said, we can get out of our mindset by doing meditation. So we put the brain to one side and we just are in the moment, focusing on our breath or listening to a meditation track that somebody's guiding us through. That in itself just gives us a pause from pain. But how do we actually develop our own coping strategies with when pain becomes too much? When pain is all consuming and when it's changing our lives for what we think is the worst? Well, number one, remember that you have been through painful periods in your life several times over, but you've possibly forgotten what they were and what it felt like to be in that time because it's in the past. And this, like everything else, will be in the past at some point. Even something that you felt 5 minutes ago is now past, it's now done. So you always have an opportunity to change how you feel in the present. And if you're going through a painful experience right now, or if you're in the midst of chronic pain, I really recommend that you surround yourself with things that make you feel connected to yourself and to other people in a positive way. So first of all, your environment, where you live, what you look at, that should be uplifting to you. So whether it's having plants around, whether it's having fantastic pictures of your family and that bring about really happy feelings as soon as you walk past them, whether it's having lovely music on all the time rather than music that makes you feel agitated because you're not doing enough. So relaxation music, for example, ambient music, healing music, that's what I have in the clinic because it inspires people to be in a more peaceful and calm place. I don't want people to feel that they should be rushed through something. And also, I don't want a spike in emotion. I just want people to be on a nice, even keel as I'm doing work with them. So your environment is super, super, super important. Even just having some candles lit in the evening or going for a sunset walk, watching that light fade, that type of trigger is going to put you into that parasympathetic mode, which I've spoken about before, which is when we go into the calming and the healing mode, and we allow our body to do the work that it needs to do to help us recover. The other things that you can do are avoiding the negative, so they're avoiding the heavy. So avoiding having confrontations and conversations with people who are heavy going and draining. Super important when you're going through pain. So there'll be some people who don't understand your situation, who possibly try and encourage you to, keep your chin up, it'll be okay, or you're still ill, or of course you don't really want to do that because you've got your leg injury or whatever. Somebody that puts a dampener on your day is somebody that should be at arm's length when you're in pain. I know it sounds really obvious, but sometimes those people are close to us. Sometimes it's your boss, or sometimes it's your best friend. But those people should not be around you at a time when you're your most vulnerable. this time should attract people that make you feel good and make you feel valued. So that's where your mentors come in. That's where your therapist comes in if you're having psychological counselling. That's where your mum comes in if your mum is a positive influence and makes you feel better. It's also where those distant voices, such as the distant mentors, whether you like listening to Wayne Dyer and his recordings because you find that his voice resonates with something in you that makes you feel good, or whether it's listening to Rangan Chatterjee. Okay, I'm listing my favourite people here now, but we all have voices of broadcasters and experts that lift us out from a certain place where we're in that woe is me. And when we're in that victim mode, we become our worst enemy. So if we have inspirations around us, whether it's a book that we like reading that always lifts our spirits and makes us feel propelled to try just that little bit better, then we need to be using those as much as we possibly can. Now, I am a realistic person. I know that you're going to have days where you cannot get yourself out of that headspace. And that's just the natural ebb and flow of life. And if you're having that day today, tomorrow you won't feel this way. Tomorrow you'll be a fraction more upbeat. Tomorrow you will have glimpses of hope. But if today you're in a funk and you're feeling awful about yourself and your situation, that's okay. This too shall pass, because that is the natural rhythm of life. Everything changes. Be sure that even if you feel complete despair, that your pain is overwhelming, just like grass grows and clouds move across the sky, this is never going to be exactly the same tomorrow. And you always have the ability to choose to be positive, to choose to find ways to make your pain just that bit more bearable. So don't forget to reach out to other people, to be mindful and practice some meditation, to prioritize your sleep, and all of those natural things that we should be doing as humans, that's part of human behavior and part of maintaining good mental health and physical health. All those things contribute to a much better way of living in general, and that we can fall back into those whenever we're in that place of despair. So from my heart to yours, I sincerely wish you a really comfortable journey through pain, and don't forget that you are never truly alone. And in my next episode, I'll be talking more about how you can cope with your healing journey. And I wish you all the best for now. Take care.